Good evening, everyone. My name is Paul Phillips, and I'm the Borough Director here at the Bronx office at the New York City Department of City Planning. It is my pleasure to welcome you to tonight's info session for the Bronx Metro North Neighborhood Plan. Tonight's event is the last in a series of coordinated outreach events with local elected officials and city council land use, which took place last fall. Coordinated outreach with elected officials will continue throughout the public review process. This evening session will be focused on preparing for public review of the proposed land use changes in Morris Park and Parkchester Van Ness in support of the MTA's work related to Penn Station East Side access. The purpose of this evening session is to provide context to our planning work to date, and most importantly, ensure you all have the necessary information and tools to engage with the city as part of the formal public review process that will officially kick off and launch on January 22nd. Next slide, please. I would first like to ask if anyone needs interpretation at this meeting. Please click on the icon, on the interpretation icon for Spanish and Bengali to hear a simultaneous interpretation of the session. To hear interpretation in Bengali, please click German below. During the Q&A, staff will be available to provide language assistance for Spanish speakers as needed. Spanish and Bengali speaking participants may also contact us for additional assistance via email at bmns@planning.nyc.gov. Next slide, please. We will start with the presentation, and we will dedicate the balance of the meeting to your questions and how to engage in the formal public review process. For those, if you wish to participate in the meeting by phone, please dial 877-853-5247 or 888-788-0099. When you are prompted, please enter the meeting ID number, which is 852-5357-8566. Press pound to skip, and your password would be 1. If you are experiencing any technical difficulties, DCP staff is available to provide support. Please dial any of the phone numbers listed above, then enter the following meeting ID and password when prompted. Meeting ID is 618-237-7396. Again, press pound to skip, and the password would be 1. Next slide, please. During the presentation, you can submit written questions by using the Zoom Q&A feature. Once we start the live Q&A session, you will have an additional option to ask questions by raising your hand in Zoom or pressing *9 on your phone. We will call on people in the order of when their hand is raised. When your name is called, you will be able to unmute yourself and turn on your camera. As usual, we will alternate between written questions and those who want to ask a question verbally. Next slide, please. So tonight's agenda is as follows. We'll have welcome and opening remarks, an overview of the MTA station work. That will be followed by outreach and engagement. Then we will move on to a brief overview of jobs planning, briefly overview of the planning framework. We will have a brief description and discussion about what the Uniform Land Use Review Procedure is. Then we'll move to what is SECRA, then next Q&A, and following by next steps. To begin tonight's section, I would like to hand it off to Dan Garodnick, Chair of the City Planning Commission and Director of the New York City Department of City Planning. Dan?
All right. Thanks very much, Paul. And good evening, everybody. As you heard, my name is Dan Garodnick, and I'm the Director of the Department of City Planning. I want to thank you so much for your participation in tonight's session on our Bronx Metro North plan, which really is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for Bronx residents and also for all New Yorkers. We are really excited about the 4 new Metro North stations that are coming to Co-op City, Morris Park, Parkchester Van Ness, and Hunts Point. And we also want to make sure that our land use policies keep up here and best support these neighborhoods' current and future needs. The new stations set to open in 2027, will cut down on commute times and connect our communities with tens of thousands of jobs in the Bronx, Manhattan, Westchester, and Connecticut. So we need to take advantage of this moment to create a brighter future in the East Bronx. To that end, the Bronx Metro North Plan delivers new housing and economic development that connects local residents with thousands of new jobs, improved open space, community services, enhanced transit access, and much, much more. The point of tonight's meeting, and you saw the extensive agenda here that Paul just laid out, is to provide an overview of the upcoming public review process and to answer your questions on how to weigh in on the plan moving forward. We have had many years of engagement, feedback, and community input to draft this plan going back to 2018. The outreach included in-person and virtual workshops, weekly office hours to answer questions, surveys, small group meetings. So to those of you who have participated over time, thank you, thank you. Over the past year, we've been hard at work finalizing the proposal and environmental review documents for the start of the public review process, which is imminent. And it is during the public review process, there's going to be plenty more opportunities for members of the public to ask questions, provide their input on the plan, including public hearings before community boards 9, 10, and 11, the borough president, Vanessa Gibson, city planning commission, and of course, the city council at the end of the day. I just want to encourage everybody to get involved, not just tonight, but throughout the public review process. We want to hear your voice on the proposed land use changes, the investments around the new stations in these 4 neighborhoods. So please, we welcome your participation. And in fact, we encourage it. And before I turn it back over to Paul, I just want to take a moment to thank Bronx Borough President Vanessa Gibson, council members Rafael Salamanca, Amanda Farias, Kevin Riley, and Christy Marmorato for their leadership. We can only do big and important things in partnership with all of you, and we appreciate you very much. And of course, to Council Member Marmorato, welcome. I remember being 10 days in as a council member myself, and there is a drinking out of a fire hose element to it. So we thank you very much for being here with us tonight. And again, most of all, thank you to the members of the public who have been involved throughout this planning process. Whether you attended one meeting or every meeting, your voice was essential in helping us to craft this important plan. And I believe that together we are on the cusp of charting a path to a more accessible, equitable, prosperous, and vibrant East Bronx. We're really excited to get this done. Paul, thank you for the opportunity to say a few words, and I'm now going to turn it back to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Dan. And speaking of elected officials, I want to acknowledge, I think we have several elected officials in the House. We have Bronx Borough President Vanessa L. Gibson. We have Council Member and Chair Salamanca. We also have Council Member Christy Marmorato, and we are also joined by Council Member Forrest's Chief of Staff, Randy Mailman. I think we'd like to turn it over to Borough President Vanessa Gibson first to say a few words.
One moment, Madam Borough President. I'm just promoting you now.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much. Thank you to our chair, Dan Garodnick, my former colleague and forever friend. Thank you to our director at the Bronx DCP office, Paul Phillips, and to everyone at the Department of City Planning. Good evening to all of my colleagues, and thank you all to our fellow Bronx residents, stakeholders, community board members, advocates, business leaders, union leaders, everyone who is so excited about what lies ahead for the residents and families of our borough, but certainly for the East Bronx. Thank you to everyone for attending this evening. It really shows your commitment and your dedication, and it really shows that you understand the important role that all of you play as residents and advocates of our great borough. I am the Bronx Borough President, Vanessa L. Gibson. I welcome all of you to tonight's information session regarding the Metro North expansion project with access to Penn Station. Very excited about this new project that will finally come to our great borough after many, many years and much effort of trying to make this happen. This project is truly transformative for our borough, for our communities, and it will truly help to address transit deserts in our East Bronx neighborhoods. The new line will create economic opportunities by giving residents and commuters access to new job centers, programs, while reducing their commute time. It is proposed that this project will help to create 10,000 new jobs. You heard it right, 10,000 new jobs. In addition to jobs and economic development, there will be opportunities to create a range of housing types, including housing for our older adults, housing for our veterans, and affordable housing that will really have direct access to regional transit options. It is also proposed that this project will create 6,000 new residential units, with many being permanently affordable. And we know that affordable is not always accessible to everyone. So we truly want to make sure that this project is affordable to working class families. In addition, with the new stations that we are talking about, ladies and gentlemen, in Co-op City, in Hunts Point, in Morris Park, and in the Parkchester Van Ness communities, we have the ability to really invest in our transportation infrastructure to provide equity and access, local jobs, stimulating the economy, supporting our small businesses, our business improvement districts, and all of our merchants and mom and pop shops, and really providing a true transit-oriented development plan that will include many of our capital commitments that will allow these development projects to really flourish in our communities. This includes streetscape improvements, transportation projects to make areas safe for pedestrians, for cyclists, for older adults, for families with small children, and really making sure that we add more value to our communities today. There are proposed land use changes for the Parkchester Van Ness and the Morris Park stations that will allow for more vibrant communities with new mixed-use development. These new stations could potentially save up to an hour going into Penn Station each way. That's 2 hours a day, or 75 minutes if you are heading further east to Connecticut. These stations are truly, truly going to make a real impact and difference. So we want to make sure that we're talking to all of you. We're getting your ideas, because this is a community-driven plan for us, by us, making sure that we include all of the components that we know matter when you talk about building transit-rich neighborhoods. And these 4 neighborhoods have the ability and the promise and potential to really do that. I am proud to have worked with all of our elected officials, as well as DCP, MTA, the New York City Council, to host 5 information sessions last year with my colleagues, with Councilmember Amanda Farias, with Councilmember Kevin Riley, Councilmember Rafael Salamanca Jr., former council member Marjorie Velasquez, and we look forward to working with our new council member of District 13, Christy Marmorato, and her team. And these information sessions really gave us a greater understanding of what we should be thinking about as we talk about expanding the Metro North project. We heard a lot of ideas, so thank you to everyone that has already provided input. And I'm so proud to say that as of today, January 10th, we have already worked with the city department, DCP, in releasing a report that just puts together all of our information sessions and gives all of you a greater understanding of some of the details that we should be thinking about when it comes to transportation, pollution, noise, construction, when it comes to bicycle lanes, when it comes to pedestrian safety, streetscaping, lighting, everything that you all talk about consistently, we want to make sure that that is a part of the conversation. So I'm really grateful for those info sessions. And tonight is just another added piece of more information for all of you to be a part of. And so I do want to thank the Department of City Planning. Thank you to our chair, Dan Garodnick, our director. Thank you to our director of the Bronx office, Paul Phillips, to our project manager, Michael Cavalar. I want to thank Community Board 9, Community Board 10, Community Board 11, all of the council members, the New York City Council, and land use community engagement teams, MTA, everyone that has been on the ground and continues to be on the ground. Thank you for getting us to this point. We look forward to moving ahead, eager to see this project continue. $3 billion project, union jobs. You understand the impact that this Metro North expansion project is going to really have on our East Bronx, but think about the message it sends to the entire borough of the Bronx. When we work together with community, city agencies, we can truly get things done. So I welcome all of you to tonight's info session. Please stay connected with us, stay informed, stay engaged, share this information with your neighbors, family members, and friends. And as we go through the public review process, you will all have an opportunity to continue to share your feedback, positive, negative. We want to hear it all, good, bad, indifferent, the compliments, the criticisms, the testimonies, the stories is all a part of this conversation. So get ready for these stations, 2027, right around the corner. We are excited. We look forward to working with all of you. And thank you all for joining us, and to all of my colleagues in the City Council and all of my elected officials. Thank you for your partnership. Thank you, New York City Council, and we look forward to the work ahead. Thanks so much. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you so much, Borough President Gibson, for those words. We really appreciate it. Next, I believe Councilmember Salamanca is here. We wanted to give him an opportunity to speak. And before we do that, I also just wanted to acknowledge Assemblymember John Zaccaro, who I believe is in attendance as well. Thank you for attending. And I think we'll turn it over to Councilmember Salamanca right now and allow him to say a few words.
Promoting you now, Councilmember.
All right, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
All right, good evening, everyone. I will be brief because I know that you don't want to hear us elected officials speak. We want to hear from you and hear exactly what are your concerns. But before I begin, I want to remind the chair and DCP that you forgot one of the main community boards. That's Community Board 2 in Hunts Point, where we're starting these Metro North lines, which is the Hunts Point community. I'm extremely excited about this opportunity and hearing from the community. When we had these info sessions, we heard from the community some of the concerns that I heard and some of the concerns that I share with you. Number one is parking. Where are there going to be new parking lots that the city of New York is going to identify, since we're going to have outsiders from outside of our communities driving into our communities to park, to hop on the Metro North to get to their destination? Affordable housing. Ensuring that housing is truly affordable and that the city is providing the subsidies that they need so that we can keep the AMIs as low as possible. Local hiring. As much as we talk about local hiring, one of the concerns that I'm constantly hearing is that they're really not hiring locally in our communities. And we want to hear about ensuring that labor who is getting these jobs are also working with our communities and ensuring that there is local hiring. I know that DCP is going to talk about the process about ULURP, and just so I can give the community a quick scenario of what's going to happen. Once the city planning certifies that application, it's going to go through a process. It's going to go to the community board, it's going to go to borough board and the borough president, and then it's going to go to city planning. But just to advise the community, when it goes to the community board and the borough president, it's advisory. And so we're going to take their advice. But ultimately, who makes the final decision and who negotiates this project is the city council and the council members. So I strongly recommend that you participate in the process of going to your community boards, giving your recommendations once they certify, because each council member is going to be very vigilant as to what your recommendations are at the community board level. And then with that, it will go through the process where we'll go through the subcommittee of zoning, and then finally it will come to land use and we will vote on it. And so with that, I just want to thank city planning. I want to thank my colleagues for participating, and I'm going to hand this back over to you, Paul.
Great. Thank you so much, Councilmember Salamanca. We really appreciate those words. I believe we are also joined tonight by Councilmember Christy Marmorato, and I think we'd like to give her an opportunity to say a few words.
Promoting you now, Councilmember.
All right. Can you hear me? All right.
Yeah,
So
yes, we can hear you. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much, City Planning, for hosting this event. It's very important to my community. Thank you for allowing us to have a say of what's actually happening in and around our neighborhood, because that is very important to the people that live in Morris Park and Van Ness. One of the deciding factors of why I moved to Morris Park was that the Metro North was going to be within walking distance of our homes. It was not only going to open us up to Manhattan, but New Haven as well. At the time when I bought the home, I worked up in New Haven, and the only way to get up there was by car. So this was going to give us an alternate means of transportation, and it was really welcomed. So I just, again, thank you very much and appreciate the time. And I'm happy that my community has a say.
Great. Thank you so much for those words. Welcome. And it's a pleasure to meet you. So I think in moving the agenda along, I think we're going to turn it over to the MTA, who will give us a brief overview of the station work.
Thank you, Paul, and thank you to all of our elected partners and obviously Director Gorodnick. You all were great in your explanations and overviews of the project. You pretty much did my job for me, so thank you very much. But my name is Joe O'Donnell. I'm the Director of Government and Community Relations for MTA Construction and the Development. We are the arm of the MTA who is delivering this project for Metro North, and we have been partnering with Department of City Planning and more recently even City Council Land Use as they embark on this effort to get out to the community, obviously to do outreach on the project itself, but there is limits to what the project will deliver, and that's where city planning picks up that first mile, last mile, and we've been partners with city planning in those engagement sessions, as Director Gorodnick mentions, all the way back to 2018, and even further than that prior to my existence on this particular project. Next slide, please. So just to sort of give everybody a sense of where we are, we're going to level set. Some of you may not have seen this presentation before. Most of you do. Most of you know what this project is intended to achieve and deliver. First and foremost, it is a transit equity project designed to address what we consider a transit desert, areas of the Bronx that do not have sufficient enough means of public transportation, trying to get folks out of cars to eliminate greenhouse gases, traffic, and potentially respiratory illnesses, and get them into trains so that we can free up the streets. So I'm going to go through a little bit of where we are to date, where we will be in the future, talk to you a little bit about what we've done for community engagement. It says Q&A here, but I'll turn it back over to DCP to walk through their portion, and then we'll probably take questions at the end, I would imagine. Next slide. So this is, as I mentioned, a project for Metro North. It is to create Metro North rail service from the Bronx to Penn Station. So a direct one-seat ride from Co-op City, Morris Park, Parkchester, Van Nest, and Hunts Point. You will be able to get on at these stations and take the train directly into Penn Station. As Councilmember Marmorato just mentioned, it is also great for reverse commuting as well for folks coming out of Penn Station to get into the Bronx. We're here to talk tonight about Metro North to Morris Park. Morris Park is a vibrant educational and medical community, as well as a retail community on the other side of the tracks. commercial corridor there. So it makes these areas that much more accessible and therefore that much more attractive to work and to attract world-class talent. So folks from the central business district of Manhattan can get out to these areas, that world-class talent, that much more easily. And then also those folks can get to not only the Bronx, and Bronxites can then get to points north, like job centers in White Plains or Stamford. It's going to create those 4 new stations that I mentioned at Co-op City, Morris Park, Parkchester, Van Ness, and Hunts Point. It's going to increase regional transportation connectivity. There's a whole host of improvements that we're going to be doing on behalf of Amtrak here that's going to help with their intra-city passengers as well. We're upgrading the Hellgate line to a state of good repair, and then we'll also be expanding the New Rochelle yard so that it can not only accommodate the new service, but it'll be able to maintain and take care of trains, lay up trains there as well. Next slide. This gives you a sense of all of the various elements that we're going to be doing along the right-of-way here. So there's obviously going to be needing new power to power the new trains and the new service. So everything you see in green or the lime colored are new substations that'll be used to power the Metro North service. We're going to be doing upgrades to the bridges, the Pelham Lane Bridge in red, Eastchester Road Bridge, Bronxdale Avenue and Bronx River Bridge. There's a whole host of interlocking. So that's the blue areas: Bronx interlocking, Pelham Bay interlocking, Tremont, Young, and Leggett. Leggett is critical, and I'll get to Leggett in a little bit because it's at the southern port of the alignment. And what it does is it frees us up to do more work upstream and get that work done in a more expeditious and efficient manner, because it allows us to switch Amtrak trains off of the track that we're working on onto another track, so that A, we're minimally impacting Amtrak service, but B, we're also making sure that our folks don't need to have to get off the tracks so that they can safely do the work, thereby eliminating productive work time, because they have to keep getting off the tracks every time a train comes by. Trains are not like cars. You can't stop and turn on a dime. So we literally need to move them from one track to another. And that's what these interlockings do. And then obviously you have the stations. Next slide. Everybody pretty much has mentioned the vast amount of benefits that this project is intended to achieve. The decreased travel times, chief among them, because we're going to save upwards of 50 minutes each way for some folks, and there will be a breakdown of the specific station by station travel time savings in a minute. But economic vitality, I know there's been a lot of talk about jobs and economic investment in these communities. Well, not only are we going to be procuring supplies, goods, materials, and work from this community to deliver this project, but as I mentioned, in the long term, it's going to make these areas that much more accessible and desirable for folks to come work. So it's going to be great for folks from a world-class talent standpoint, and then it's going to be also great for folks to come up and shop and utilize restaurants and the medical services and everything in the Bronx that the great borough of the Bronx has to offer. It's going to literally and figuratively bridge communities. You talk about Morris Park, where you have got on the one side of the community, you've got the Einstein Montefiore medical complex and all of the educational and medical opportunities on that side. On the other side, you've got Hutch Metro Center and all the commercial and retail opportunities there. Typically right now, today, someone has to go all the way around to get from one side to the other. Fast forward to 2027, when this service gets up and running, you'll be able to utilize the Metro North station to traverse from one side of the tracks to the other. So if you have to go over to Einstein for something, or if you have to go over to from the Einstein side to the Hutch Metro Center side, you can literally walk across our passageway. I mentioned sustainability and getting folks out of cars. We want to encourage them to switch to travel, reducing traffic congestion, which prevents folks from sitting there idling, which improves air quality, which reduces respiratory disease and impacts. We talked about reverse commuting, and we've talked about the infrastructure improvements, but this project's unique in the sense that there is not a lot, and I'm not going to say there is none, but there will not be a lot of impact outside of the existing right-of-way because we're optimizing what is essentially a 2-track railroad now and turning it into a 4-track railroad inside essentially the same footprint. Obviously, we're going to have to expand that where we're putting the station platforms and entrance and exit locations. But the railroad right-of-way itself, aside from maximizing its existing footprint, is largely staying the same. So no new tunnels, no new wholesale property acquisitions, very minimal impacts from that standpoint. Along with the regional connectivity or the Metro North connectivity, it's going to expand your travel options once you get into areas like Penn Station, because now you can take that train right into Penn Station and transfer to Long Island Railroad, New Jersey Transit, New York City Bus, New York City Railroad, the Path. So it opens up the world of transportation options to folks in the Bronx right now. And then it enhances network reliability. Right now, the Park Avenue Viaduct and the one line in and one line out of Manhattan for Metro North is a single point of failure. We've seen during Superstorm Sandy, the fire that hit the Park Avenue Viaduct in 2016. Singular incidents like this can shut down service to and from the Bronx. This provides network reliability for Metro North and a secondary lifeline into and out of the city so that there's redundancy. Next. I'm not going to go through each one of these because you all can see it on our website, on DCP's website, and then obviously here tonight. But just using Co-op City, for instance, right now from Co-op City to Penn Station, current travel time is about 75 minutes, and that's using mass transit options at your disposal today. Fast forward to 2027, and that same trip will take you 25 minutes, a one-seat ride, as I mentioned, from Co-op City to Penn Station. If you're going points north, if you're going to, say, Stanford, which is also a vibrant job center, that is 110-minute travel time today. Fast forward to 2027, and you're talking 37 minutes. That's 73 minutes each way. That's 140 minutes, over 2 hours of time that you can be spent doing things better with your life, doing things that you enjoy, spending time with your family and doing hobbies, etc. That is better spent than commuting back and forth when there's a better way. Next slide. As I mentioned, we're going to be doing a lot of work for Amtrak and the freight railroads. This is an Amtrak right-of-way. We are, and when I say we, the MTA is going to be a tenant of Amtrak's here. So this is really all taking place inside Amtrak's existing infrastructure. So we are reliant, we're dependent upon them for not only access to do the work, but their approvals for our plans and for our means and methods. But also, we're going to be doing a lot of work to bring their system up to a state of good repair. That includes the Hellgate Line catenary system, which is how they power their trains. That's that overhead, the wires and lines that you see above the Acela train on the right. We're going to be improving those 100-plus-year-old bridge structures and replacing some of them, which is going to improve their longevity. We're going to be increasing electrical capacity along the system, improving signal the system and communication system. In this area of the line is prone to flooding, so there's going to be a significant amount of storm mitigation that goes on here with stormwater management and new drainage. So this is going to be a more resilient system in and of itself from a storm capacity standpoint. Next slide. This gives you a sense. On the left-hand side of the screen is a cartoon layout or a rendering. They're both renderings, but one's a drawing of where a schematic of where the station will be. So for Hunts Point, the station is going to be facing, the main entrance to the station will be facing Garrison Avenue. And there will be an overpass that you will be able to go from the center platform either to the main entrance on Garrison Avenue or over to the Bruckner side of the other side of the station. And then on the right-hand side of the screen, you see a conceptual rendering of what the actual station will look like. Now, all these stations are going to be by Metro North guidelines. So you'll have that wood underlay that you see there. Very minimalistic, but tasteful stations. All the stations will have artists. We went through a very public artist procurement process over the summer last year where we selected the artists out of, I believe, over 44 artists for each of these stations. Each station will have its own distinct art component. Next slide. Similarly for Parkchester Van Nest, you can see here the main entrance for this station will be on East Tremont Avenue. There will be a secondary entrance at the Unionport Road Bridge. And that's because we can't do a cross-platform entrance here because there's a Con Edison facility on the other side. But this is going to be a great opportunity for all the folks in the Parkchester apartment complexes. This is going to be a station that's located right across the street from them and provide direct one-seat access, not only into the West Side Central Business District, but as I mentioned, the points north in Stanford. As you can see on the right-hand side, again, those distinctive Metro North design details. Again, I don't know that I pointed out with Hunts Point, but there's a lot of glass elements involved in this, so they're very light and open and airy, and also creates an element of safety as well because everything is open and transparent. Next slide. For Morris Park, we talked about in great detail. On one side, you're going to have the Einstein community and the medical center and the medical community. On the other side, the retail community and the Hutch Metro Center. So we're going to be on both sides of Bassett Avenue here. So we have an entrance on the south at Bassett Avenue Private. And that's called Bassett Avenue Private because really the vast majority of folks who access this area via vehicle right now are to go to the logistics centers and the distribution centers. But the new entrance will come down inside the area next to the residents in there and the parking garage to the right. You'll be able, as I say, to go over the overpass to the center platform where you can either get on your northbound or southbound train, or you can continue across to Bassett Avenue Public, which is on the Einstein side of the complex here. Again, on the right-hand side, conceptual rendering of what the finished station will look like. Next slide. Co-op City. This station is a little unique in the sense that it is stationed underneath, a portion of it will be underneath the I-95 overpass. Because of the unique nature of this, one of the art components of this station will be a lighting component, which will be in the ceiling of the station entrance. So there is an entrance at Erskine Place, and then there's a secondary emergency egress to the north. But the main entrance will be on Erskine Place across the street from DeRimer Avenue. And there will be the one platform where you will be able to take the train either north or south from Co-op City. As you can see on the right, again, you have the lot of glass and wood and open features here. And all along the platform, which is not obviously visible today because it's not completed yet, but there will be the art component, the lighting component underneath the station platform ceiling all the way along the platform there. Next slide. So where are we in the life of the project? That we first started out with a lot of clearing and grubbing and getting the right of way ready. We then negotiated with Amtrak a long-term outage, which we had brokered with them from Memorial Day to Labor Day of this past year, which allowed us to do a lot of that really critical work safely and efficiently while we still work on that Leggett interlocking. Because Leggett interlocking is not done, like I said, we can't switch trains off of the tracks that we're working on. We have to get off the tracks when trains are coming. So that long-term outage moved trains through Labor Day off of certain tracks, and Amtrak operated on only one of their tracks so that we could do that work safely. It wasn't as effective as we initially hoped due to some staffing shortages on Amtrak's part and some oversight, but we're working on a long-term outage for 2024 with them as well. Again, working with them to minimize impacts to them so that we can do as much work as we can safely and effectively while we complete Leggett. We anticipate finishing Leggett in Q1 or Q2 of 2024, and that'll really free us up to get moving a lot more quickly without fear of trains. Next slide. This really goes into some of the detail that I spoke about the long-term outage from March through September. It improved construction efficiency by allowing us to work on these tracks. and larger critical windows to get that significant work done along the tracks. Next slide. So some of the things that we were able to complete was we removed 3 miles of CSX track 5. We completed a switch installation for CSX switch E, and we profiled track 2, which means we basically cleaned it up and cleared it out and made it so that we can add more track. Next slide. Progress to date on the project. We have completed 72% of the overhead catenary foundations that we intended to achieve. We've completed 39% of the Van Nest drainage system. We've completed 25% of Eastchester Road bridge work, 15% of Bronxdale Ave bridge work, 21% of our retaining walls, 60% of the retaining wall 2, and 80% of retaining wall 13. And these percentages are of anticipated completion for the entirety of the project. So we're well along the road to completion on these particular elements of work. Next slide. I mentioned, I'm not going to go into too much detail on this, Paul. I think we could probably jump through this because we've talked about the criticality of Leggett in some detail already. But like I said, it's important for us to get this done, and we anticipate getting that done in early 2024 so that we can minimize any impacts to Amtrak and make sure that our folks can do their work safely. Next slide. And then the last thing is, along with all of the great work that city planning is doing and city council has been doing of late with these visioning exercises to talk about first mile, last mile, these are just some of the examples that, you know, my team has been doing. We have a dedicated community outreach team that is stationed here specifically to do outreach. So we try to participate in as many public events. If you have public events that you'd like us to participate or table at to bring information out at, you know, we're partnered with DCP to be out at all of their public events in all of the 4 station areas. We've worked with the Greater Hunts Point EDC, the Chamber of Commerce, the Point. We went out to the Spring Mingle. You know, we've done a bunch of events, including a jobs information event here with 23 unions from the Building and Construction Trades Council of Greater New York. You know, so we've been out here early. We intend to be out here through the duration of the project. You know, this is an ongoing dialogue. We're not going anywhere. We're happy to answer questions and be out as many and all functions you want, including, you know, we meet regularly quarterly with not only the community boards in each of these station areas, but we have our own Bronx Westchester Community Council that was started by the Bronx Borough President's Office and Westchester County Executive's Office back in 2018. So each of those groups meet quarterly. So we have a direct line of communication to the project between those advocates for the community and the project. So, you know, if you have questions and concerns, get them to your elected officials and the borough president, your community boards and city council, and we'll make sure that they get addressed. And I think that's essentially it. This is all the information as to how you can get a hold of us or get the most up-to-date information on the project. There's a dedicated hotline, a dedicated email. There is a project website where you can go to get information on the project and all of the latest updates. You can also sign up for newsletters. You can sign up by station, or you can sign up for them all. Maybe you want to only hear about Hunts Point or only about Morris Park, or you want to hear about 2, or you want to hear about all 4. You can tailor the level of information to your desire. You know, so we don't want to burden you, but we want to make sure you have as much information as you like.
Great. Thank you so much, Joe. We really appreciate that information. Next, moving the agenda along, I'm going to turn it over to Michael Cavalar, who is a senior team leader and also the project lead here in the Bronx office of the Department of City Planning. Michael?
Okay. Thank you, Paul. Joe just spoke about the MTA's work. Obviously, that work is setting the stage for the work that we're doing. Our planning work has been focused on complementing this very significant investment, as the borough president noted in her speech, that is coming to the Bronx. And so our job as the city has been over the last 6 years to lead the planning efforts, to work together with our city agency partners, with state agencies and federal agencies in this case as well, to ensure that we're thinking thoughtfully about everything that happens around the MTA's work. And so we can coordinate the work and ensure that the stations are as thoughtfully integrated into the neighborhoods as possible. So we just want to quickly step you through a little bit of the history of those last years and some of the outreach, share a little bit in terms of updates about the jobs planning work, which as we heard earlier, is a very important part of the work. And so we just want to speak to that quickly. And then we'd like to speak about the framework planning and really giving a heads up for the coming steps in the public process, the beginning of the land use process specifically for a couple of the stations. But if we could just go to the next slide, please. I just want to emphasize, that we are talking about 4 stations here. Councilmember Salamanca noted Hunts Point and the importance of Hunts Point. Our planning work has taken a station-by-station approach. We've been out at all of the stations over the years and have done specific events for those stations. But with the coming land use actions specifically that you'll hear a little bit more about at the end of the presentation tonight, those are really focused on the Parkchester, Van Nest, and the Morris Park station areas. But it bears repeating that the larger planning work, which does include thinking strategically about capital investments around the stations, that does include Hunts Point and Co-op City, as well as many other aspects of the larger planning work. So with that, if we could just go to the next slide. We started this work officially in July of 2018. So we've been at this for some time now. Before the pandemic, in those early years, we did a number of events. We had a working group structure. So we would go out. Some of you on the call tonight might remember this. You might have been at these meetings. But we had, focused workshops by each of the station areas, whether that was at St. Raymond's Elementary or over at Montefiore Einstein, over at the Community Center in Co-op City, or the Point down at Hunts Point. We went out a fair amount to work through with the community members your vision for what you'd like to see around the stations. We heard a lot. We learned a lot. To be honest, we issued an initial draft set of recommendations in April of 2019 and shared those for feedback. And then, of course, we had the pandemic sort of in the middle of this timeline here. And then we came back after that with a kind of remote version of this. We shared back some recommendations. We had those on lines. We had a series of videos and remote sessions. We also began our office hours, which I'll just note continue to this day, and we can provide that information at the end. But we continue to encourage members of the public and anyone with an interest to sign up for those. You can talk to us one-on-one. And really, we've been working towards this start of the formal public review process, which we're hoping will start in the next couple of weeks here. So really tonight is really about making sure that members of the public are equipped to understand that process, the timing of the process, and how to engage throughout the process. And I just want to note that the borough president spoke to the release of the sort of the findings from the joint BP CCLU City Council Land Use and Borough President's Office held some events over the last year, and we were very happy to be part of those and to participate. And so just want to note that coordination, that's been an important part of this as well. So with that, if we could just go to the next slide. The events that DCP itself has hosted have taken a number of forms. We've had in-person working groups, open houses, public workshops. We've had more recently some specific focused jobs planning work, office hours, again, that we'll mention that continue to this day in the remote open house. Next slide, please. It's also just an important note here that although the study work officially started in July of 2018, for this leg of the study, we were preceded by a former study called Sustainable Communities in the Bronx, which was primarily focused on improvements to existing Metro North stations throughout the West Bronx, but had some initial recommendations for the Morris Park and Parkchester Van Nest stations in the East Bronx. And I imagine many on the call are familiar with that study. And so we really obviously used that as a starting point, and we coordinated our thinking around what came out of that work and that initial round that was released in 2014. There have been a number of other planning efforts over the years. These are just a few of them, things that might be happening, larger planning exercises near the stations, or other efforts around the stations. And so here is a selection, including, for instance, the Bronx Psychiatric Center, which is a state Empire Development Corporation project to redevelop the northern portion of the former Bronx Psych Center. Of course, there was Hunts Point Forward, and managed by the Economic Development Corporation of New York City down in Hunts Point, with which we coordinated over the years. Obviously, again, it bears repeating the recent coordination with CCLU and the Borough President's Office as part of their outreach around each of the stations just this past year. And then most recently, we just note here a recent technical assistance program that the Urban Land Institute conducted with Montefiore Hospital as they think through their campus and what it might mean to think of it and re-envision it as a wellness kind of village, as some might say. Next slide, please. Here's just a sense of some of the many organizations we've worked with over the years. We apologize if this isn't complete, but this is many of those that we've been coordinating with really since we launched in many ways. So obviously, the many important neighborhood organizations in the community. Council Member Marmorato, of course, we've seen you out at many of these events and appreciate you being on again tonight. Residential management organizations, obviously, River Bay, for instance, at Co-op City is a very important stakeholder as they manage that larger development, educational institutions, medical institutions, so on and so forth. And if we've missed anyone, please don't hesitate to let us know. Next slide, please. Obviously, again, part of a study is the really important aspect of coordinating the work across agencies. And so here's a selection of just some of the agencies that our work has been coordinated with over the years that include a selection of city agencies, state agencies. Obviously, Joe from the MTA just presented and you heard from him. There are other state agencies, obviously, and uniquely in this case, really Amtrak, given, as Joe mentioned, they own the line. Next slide, please. And really, all of this has led to what Dan Gorodnick, the chair of the City Planning Commission, spoke to in his speech at the beginning, which is the Metro North Neighborhood Plan, which is really couched into these three categories. If you've been out at our events over the last couple of years, these will likely be familiar to you, which is about we have vibrant communities, which is about how we plan for growth while celebrating who we are. This really touches on everything from housing and jobs to open space schools, area history, and many other topics. We have connected communities, which is about how we plan to help get people around the neighborhood, the city, and the region. And this, of course, touches on everything from sidewalk connections to roadway improvements and so much more. And then finally, working communities, which is obviously a very important aspect of the work for a number of reasons, but it bears repeating that the station study is unique because this isn't just about necessarily the planning work specifically at the stations, but this is a whole line that's going to open up connections north and south. And it's also an opportunity to think thoughtfully about how we work to get New Yorkers more generally and Bronxites more specifically connected to jobs opportunities in the future and sort of the industries of the future. All of these, I'll just note, are available on our website, and we can drop the link in the chat. It's just www.nyc.gov/BMNS for short, and that'll take you there. Or you can shoot us an email, and we can share that as well. If we could go to the next slide, please. So just a couple of notes on the workforce development and jobs planning, which has been an important part of our work. If we just go to the next slide, please. Sorry. Taking a step back, we obviously want to recognize the unique nature of this study and that we're talking about 4 stations towards the southern portion of what is a very important and vibrant line that is already home to a lot of jobs. In fact, about as many private sector jobs as St. Louis, as the city of St. Louis, when we combine these together. And uniquely, 2 of those job centers really at Hunts Point, with obviously the major markets at Hunts Point, but also Morris Park, which is home to sort of somewhat naturally occurring job center that has occurred without the benefit of transit in the middle of it, which is going to get a station in the middle of it. So this is a unique condition. This line is home to a number of types of resources and jobs, but it also happens to be something of a naturally occurring life sciences corridor that is developed in the region. And we think there's an opportunity for Morris Park specifically to play a role in the future of that along the line. Next slide, please. So speaking of Morris Park, as Joe noted, the station is going to land right in the middle here. So you can kind of see it in the middle of the screen, and that's really the intersection of Morris Park Ave. If you were to follow Morris Park Ave to the east, when you get to Bassett Ave, which MTA called Bassett Ave Public, that'll take you right about to where the station entrance will be. It will, as Joe noted, have pedestrian access across the two sides. And we certainly did learn over the years that that flow is really important to a number of the institutions here, to be able to go back and forth quickly without having to go down to Waters Place and up Eastchester. It is really an added value. But we have a number of institutions here. We obviously have Health and Hospitals, Jacobi Medical Center, which is a very important city hospital. We have the Albert Einstein College of Medicine, which is connected now to Montefiore Hospital. Albert Einstein College of Medicine obviously is a world-class research institution. They also happen to already be doing a lot of life sciences work on their campus. Montefiore obviously goes without saying, a very important institution in the Bronx, the Bronx's largest private employer as well. We have a number of other institutions such as Calvary Hospital, the Bronx Psychiatric Center that's been consolidated to the southern portion, Mercy College, now Mercy University, apologies, this needs to be updated, has a campus in the Hutchinson Metro Center. The bottom of the screen here as well, of course, we have Amazon has a distribution facility here that Joe alluded to. We have the Public Safety Answering Center too, and a number of other institutions that really adds up to a lot of students and postdoc fellows, about 3,000, a lot of medical offices in this specific area, about 300, and a lot of jobs, about 23,000 in the immediate area. And this before the new service. We think there's an opportunity to grow this job center in a thoughtful way around new transit service. And so with that, we'll just go to the next slide. As part of the jobs planning work, this is just a little bit on the approach we've been taking. So we over the years have done a large amount of community and stakeholder engagement, and have sort of re-upped that over the last year, really going back out to workforce development groups and the major and minor institutions in the area to understand better their plans for the future, how they intend to grow, what might be challenges to that, and so on and so forth. This is involved in understanding of the local labor market and workforce trends. We recently, just this last fall, were able to bring together a number of very important institutions that are thinking very thoughtfully about how they want to grow around the new service and in the area. This will culminate in first a very specific set of actions and in to sort of advance those goals. And then obviously we've been working with another important city partner here, which is the Mayor's Office of Talent and Workforce Development. And so we'll be providing, and that work will continue in parallel with the specifics of the land use actions you'll hear a little bit more about tonight, and is just a very important part of the work, and we would be remiss not to mention it. Next slide, please. So with that, we just want to really quickly speak to generally the approach around the stations, just noting again that we hope to begin the public process in just a couple of weeks here. Hoping to begin on the 22nd. That's not definitive yet, but you will hear more detail at that point. And if you're signed up for our newsletter, our mailing list, or you follow our website, you will see details on that as it becomes available. And we'll be certain to also send out blasts on our usual means, Twitter, Instagram, and so on and so forth. So with that, next slide, please. So again, just a reminder, we have the 4 station areas, but really the focus of the land use actions that will be part of that public process, the ULERP process, which is specifically centered around the land use actions, will be focused around Morris Park and Parkchester Van Nest. Next slide, please. At Parkchester Van Nest, just speaking largely to the larger goals here, we think there's a unique opportunity to promote fair transit-oriented development that benefits all residents. And we mean all residents, not just residents that might use the new service in the future. We think there's an opportunity to encourage the development of a mixed-use walkable district around the new station on East Tremont Ave. There's an opportunity, obviously, to be thoughtful, and we need to be thoughtful about responding to the context of the surrounding neighborhoods. There's an opportunity to encourage welcoming public connections throughout the neighborhood. And finally, it's important to ensure quality site planning for any of the large development sites that might develop in the area. Next slide, please. So in the dashed black outline here, you can get a sense, and this would be familiar to you if you've been part of our scoping session on January 9th of 2023 or any of those past informational sessions. But here you can see the station, where the station will be located, and then really sort of the area where the land use actions specifically will apply. And again, I just want to make clear that we are focused tonight on the start of the public process, ULURP, but we have a number of planning exercises that expand beyond these boundaries. Again, these boundaries are really about the ULURP actions that will be beginning in just a couple weeks here. But just to speak to it quickly, we think within this area, there's an opportunity to, we can accomplish the goals by allowing for new housing near the station and along key corridors by requiring the inclusion of permanently affordable housing and new developments. This is an area of the city that's seen very little MIH over the last 9 years. We want to allow for local retail and other services that would strengthen the commercial corridors, make for a more welcoming East Tremont Avenue, for instance. We want to provide controls to help shape and create open space on large sites in the area. There's obviously a need for open space. There always is, but there particularly is in this area. And, we want to locate density close to the station to, really capitalize on the opportunity to create new housing, including affordable housing near a new regional rail station. Next slide, please. And so here's just an illustrative image. We had shared this in past events and online and public materials, so this might be very familiar to you, but this is a view looking east along East Tremont Avenue. The left is the north side of the street. The right is the south side of the street with the Parkchester development there sort of in the foreground. And you can see the new station there and just some of the visioning that has happened over the years, but obviously the need to improve really the public realm very much so on East Tremont Avenue. We heard a lot about the need for sidewalks, the need for additional crosswalks here in this portion particularly, but also again, with an eye to opportunities for housing that is clustered near new service and so forth. And again, what you will hear about in a couple of weeks in detail is the specifics of the zoning districts and other land use actions that we think will facilitate this sort of vision of the future. Next slide, please. And so then, of course, we also have Morris Park. Morris Park is its own unique center. Larger goals that were identified over the years include creating a neighborhood center that supports transit-oriented development, supports area institutions, and obviously supports the growth of jobs in the area. Obviously, again, very important to promote fair transit-oriented development that benefits all residents. Ensuring easy and comfortable access to the station is important and is a really important part of the sort of capital planning line of work that we've provided more detail about in previous public sessions, but we will also provide detail about in our session in a couple of weeks here. It's an opportunity to promote residential growth and local retail along key corridors as well. And finally, just welcoming public connections throughout the neighborhood, particularly important here as we're talking about an ecosystem of medical campuses and other sensitive institutions. We want to make the public realm as welcoming as possible. And we think that is also important in benefiting and making the services accessible as possible. Next slide, please. So here in the dashed outline, you can see the area of where the proposed land use actions would extend with a station there in the middle. We want to allow for new housing near the new train station along key corridors. We want to require, again, the inclusion of permanently affordable housing and new developments, support, obviously, the growth of educational, health, and life science sectors in Morris Park, and again, help to locate density close to the new station and really leverage that new service and to this unique opportunity to site housing in tandem with the new service coming here within the city. And then obviously very important, we heard a lot over the years for the need for retail really close to these institutions here as well without detracting from obviously the very vibrant and healthy Morris Park Avenue corridor further to the west. Next slide, please. And here was, again, another illustrative vision we've shared over the years. This is looking towards the east, towards the future station. Road in the foreground is Morris Park Ave, where it intersects with Eastchester Road. And there you can see a vision for what a future plaza might look like and what it might look like to allow for more housing, retail, and office space around the new station there and create a welcoming entry point to the neighborhood. Next slide, please. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to Tim Doyling, a senior planner and a key member of the Bronx Metro North study team here in the Bronx, who's going to step everyone through the upcoming public process, and also some considerations with the environmental review.
Thanks, Michael, and good evening, everyone. Thank you all for joining tonight's info session. We will now shift our focus to the upcoming public review process for land use changes, which is called ULURP. And it's important, and others have pointed that out earlier tonight, it's important to spend some time going over the upcoming public review process together tonight so that everyone knows how they can participate during the process ahead of time before it starts. Next slide. So ULURP stands for Uniform Land Use Review Process, by which land use proposals get adopted in the city. An example of a land use proposal is a proposed rezoning, which changes the rules for what can get built and what uses are allowed in a specific area. And as mentioned earlier tonight, the Department of City Planning is targeting to have the proposed Bronx Metro North Neighborhood Plan enter the city's public review process soon. Community boards, the Bronx Borough President, Borough Board, City Council, and others will host public meetings and weigh in on that neighborhood plan. Next slide, please. So what kind of materials can you expect to be able to review during ULURP? Well, taken together, we call these materials a land use application package, and here you can find information about who is proposing the actions, and in this case, that's the Department of City Planning. What land use actions are proposed, for example, changing the existing manufacturing zoning to new zoning districts that would allow for housing, where it's currently not allowed. It will also say something about why the actions are requested, in this case, to plan for transit-oriented development around new stations and strengthen commercial corridors to better connect the existing neighborhoods and job centers with the new stations, and where it is located. And that's here focusing on the areas around the new train stations at Parkchester Van Nest and Morris Park. Next slide, please. So the order of who gets to review the application and how much time each decision maker has is set in ULURP. The ULURP clock starts at certification, and then each decision maker has a set amount of time to review, hold a public meeting, public hearing, and make a decision about the proposal. For example, the community boards have 60 days to review, and in total, the full ULURP process takes about 7 months. Next slide. But before an application enters ULURP and goes to all the different ULURP players, it needs to get certified. Certification means that the City Planning Commission determines that the application is complete and ready to review. Certification is to make sure that the materials that go into that land use application package are correct, accurate, and complete to have the public and their representatives weigh in on it. Next slide. The second step in the process after certification is for the community boards to review the application and hold a public hearing before submitting their recommendation on the proposal. And the Bronx Metro North Neighborhood Plan will be referred out to community boards 9, 10, and 11. Next slide. So what do community members and decision makers do with the land use application? The applicant, again, here, the Department of City Planning, gives a presentation about the proposal, and a public hearing is scheduled to hear from residents, local businesses, and other stakeholders from the community. And the focus of this public review process is to see how what is proposed aligns with the vision of the community. Community boards, the Borough President and Borough Board issue an advisory recommendation, while the City Planning Commission and City Council have a binding vote and take into account those earlier recommendations. Next slide. The third step in the process for the Bronx Borough President, Vanessa Gibson, who is here tonight with us, to review the application and issue a recommendation. The Bronx Borough Board is also involved in the ULURP process for the Bronx Metro North Neighborhood Plan, as this proposal affects more than one community district. So what I said, community districts 9, 10, and 11 are involved with this proposal. Next slide. And the fourth step in the ULURP process is for the City Planning Commission to review and vote on the proposal. The City Planning Commission submits a report to the City Council after their vote. And this report includes a detailed description of the proposed actions, a summary of the public review process to date, including public testimony, and the Commission's considerations and vote on this application. Next slide. And after the City Planning Commission issues their vote, the proposal goes to City Council, again for a public hearing and a vote. Next slide. And finally, there's opportunity for the mayor to approve or veto the City Council's decision. And City Council can then subsequently override a veto by a 2/3 majority vote. Next slide. And now we'll focus on, we'll shift our focus to SEEKR, or environmental review. It stands for the city's environmental review process. And a little bit more about that. Next slide. So SEEKR, or City Environmental Quality Review, establishes the environmental review procedure and mandates that city agencies, including city planning, act on substantive information generated by that review procedure. It also established processes by which city agencies review proposed discretionary actions, such as a rezoning, to identify the possible effects of those actions on the environment to inform decision maker. So all the decision makers that are part of ULURP that we went through just now, they will all take into account what comes out of the environmental review procedure. An environmental review is not required for all types of proposal, but an area-wide rezoning, such as the Bronx Metro North Neighborhood Plan, does require full environmental review. Next slide. And the framework for the environmental analysis compares the difference between development that could reasonably occur in the future if the proposal is approved. So that's including a rezoning. We call that the with action scenario, and any development that would occur in the area if the proposed rezoning would not happen, which we call the no action scenario. And the difference, or the increment that is studied in the environmental review, is called the reasonable worst case development scenario. Next slide, please. And the environmental analysis covers a wide range of technical areas. In total, 18 technical areas are studied in the environmental impact statement, as shown here on the slide. And the environmental analysis covers everything from noise and open space to transportation and community facilities. And other chapters in the environmental impact statement include mitigation and alternatives. Next slide, please. And here's a brief overview of the environmental review process under SEEKR. As Michael also mentioned, a scoping hearing for the draft scope of work was held on January 9th, 2023. So about a year ago now. And the scoping hearing provided an opportunity for anyone to provide comments either at the hearing or in written form and provide feedback on the proposal. Public comments will be incorporated into the final scope of work, including a response to those comments, and the draft EIS, or environmental impact statement. The final scope of work will be published together with the land use application. That's what we talked about just now in terms of ULURP, as part of that same ULURP process. Next slide, please. And that concludes our presentation, and thanks everyone for your time. I'll now hand it back to Paul.
Thank you, Chun and Michael. Appreciate that. So now I think we will move to the next part of this session, which will be the Q&A.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lara Marita. I am Senior Director for Community Planning and Engagement at DCP. I'm going to help the team out tonight on some of the Q&A. I want to first just remind everyone you can continue using the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. We have been collecting those questions and we will answer them throughout the evening. And if you, the raise hand function should be working now, hopefully, team.
It is.
Okay, thank you. So if you have any questions, you can raise your hand and we will answer. We'll make sure to get to you in line. And you can continue using the Q&A feature, as I mentioned. If you are on the phone, please press *9 and the team will queue you up to be able to answer live as well. So to start off, I think we'll go to, since I don't see hands raised at the moment, I'm going to go straight to the questions that have been starting in the chat. Give me 1 second. Joe, if you don't mind coming on camera, there are a few questions that were part of the questions that were asked during your part of the presentation. We have one question here. Is there a potential for, or has the MTA been thinking about a stop in Queens? You had mentioned.
We actually get that question quite a bit, especially from folks in Sunnyside area. The trains will be running through that area. This project, as it presently consists and is budgeted for, does not include a station in Queens. Does not preclude a station from being built in the future there. It is something that we certainly can look at, but it is not part of the budget of this project, which has already been federally allocated. Similarly, it comes up with regard, and I don't want to get too off track here because this is more about ULURP than the MTA, but the IBX project also, we get that question a lot too. This is intended to address the transit equity in the Bronx. That is a different project. They both have their own targets and intended goals, but no, it does not preclude a station from being built in Queens in the future. I guess that's the long and short of it.
Thank you for that. So another question. There's a question about amenities. Sorry, I'm trying to read it at the same time. So this is a question maybe to Michael.
Sure.
So the question is around wanting to make sure that there's amenities along the Metro North route. Specifically, they just lost a Stop and Shop that had 50,000 square feet supermarket in the area. We waited for years to get a Starbucks and just need more of these types and need more and more ethnically eating options. Have these promises to the community gone or by the wayside by plans? Or is there opportunities for this around Morris Park and Van Ness?
Yeah, thank you, Lara. Thank you, Ruth, for the question. So I think just the first thing is that we heard a lot about this over the years, the desire specifically for retail that is, oriented towards the community. Obviously, it's sad when a grocery store leaves a community. We also saw the news of the Stop and Shop leaving. I'll just say the following, and this is an important part, just bears just noting. The work that we are doing is basically setting the framework for the kind of universe of things that might happen around the station. It doesn't require anything to happen. And that includes, we can't force existing uses to go, so we can't force a use to leave to make way for instance, maybe a restaurant that might be a desired use. But what we can do is we can set the stage to make things possible. And we do know it's not just you, but it's a number of members of the community, the area institutions, for instance, have really emphasized to us over the years, really specifically at Morris Park, but also Parkchester, Van Ness, the need for more options in retail, and that includes restaurants and grocery stores and other uses like coffee shops. You mentioned the Starbucks that's there at Morris Park and Eastchester Road, and so allowing for housing and allowing for office is not incompatible with those uses. And so in any of these new developments that might happen, which are all hypothetical at this point, we do envision a future with ground floor retail. We do envision those uses. There, might be uses switch and things like that, as is natural over the years. There are some areas in which we very much want active uses like that, those exact kinds of uses. So I'll just give the example of the plaza at Morris Park as an area that we think would benefit tremendously from having things like restaurants or grocery stores or coffee shops oriented towards it and around it, and would make that a more welcoming place. And again, not just for people that might use the station in the future, but also for people that might just work in the area and might just need a place to rest, or residents that might just want to wander that way and spend time there. I don't think those promises have been left by the wayside. I think that is really exactly the kind of conversation that is the impetus for what we'll be coming forth with in terms of a proposal. And you're not alone. We've heard a lot about this over the years.
Thank you so much, Michael. Paul, this one might be for you. Yes. Under construction jobs are temporary. Union construction jobs are temporary. Sorry about that. When the building is complete, the jobs end. What about high-paying permanent jobs for our college grads who are forced to get jobs in Manhattan because our borough is not economically diverse with respect to industry sectors? We've got a lot of warehousing jobs, but little in the way of artificial intelligence programs, social media, marketing.
So that's a great question. So I think so as part of Michael's portion of the presentation, he talked a little bit about our jobs planning work. Obviously, Morris Park is a huge job center, and there's a focus to grow jobs there. But I think overall, the job planning work that we're doing, we want to look for, high paying quality jobs for all Bronx sites, including getting them there. So that work is continuing, and as we enter public review and through the public review process, we'll provide more updates on that jobs planning work. But again, just to answer that question, the goal is to really be looking at long-term, high-paying jobs for people. And also, it's really important to note, we're looking at not just getting people jobs. We want people to be in careers that they can be in long-term, that they can grow and stay in these neighborhoods and continue to be part of the borough of the Bronx.
Thank you so much. This next question, Joe, it might be to you again. This is currently about parking around the Morris Park station. Currently, there's no parking available at the location. Is there a plan for parking? Can you be a little specific about that?
Yeah, that is one of the things that we hear, and we certainly have heard in our partnership with you guys at these visioning series is the concern about parking. As I mentioned, one of the intentions of this project is to get folks out of their cars and into trains. So, there's the hope is that folks are going to take buses. There's going to be bike parking at the trains, possibly utilize bikes or scooters. There's the new stations are within walking distance from several communities. So we don't want to necessarily, the thought process is there's no parking in the budget. But it doesn't preclude parking from coming at another point or not part of this specific project. We are not precluding it, but we don't want to, sort of incent folks by creating parking and then incenting them to drive into the community, creating more congestion and more traffic. We want them to utilize the trains and the services available and get out of the cars.
Thank you, Joe. And I just want to recognize too, there was a question geared towards that on Morris Park, but also in Co-op City. So I think it's a similar answer in that vein.
Yeah, I mean, the thought process is the same. I know we've been in discussions or not, that it hasn't been active discussions, but the topic has come up with Morris Park, Co-op City. They might have aligned to a developer who may be interested in some sort of joint development project with parking there. And we're open to those discussions. That, like I said, not part of this budget, but if the opportunity arises, we're interested to have a seat at the table.
Thank you, Joe. I appreciate that. I do see some hands raised now, so I'm gonna turn to some of the raised hands. Lorraine Franco, if you'd like to, if team can promote her to answer questions.
Promoting now.
Thank you.
Lorraine, you may be seeing a little pop-up box on the screen. If you click on it, you'll be promoted to panelists and you'll be able to turn on your microphone and video. There may be a connection issue. Let me see if I can just give you permission to turn on your mic. You should just be able to turn your mic on now. I think Lorraine may be having a connection issue. we can try to get back to her,
Okay.
or come back to her in a moment.
Okay. So then let's go to the next raised hand, which is Tafada. Sorry if I pronounced that wrong.
Promoting to panelist.
Thank you.
Tefadar, you should also be seeing a small pop-up on your screen, but I'll give you the ability to turn your mic. Okay.
Both in the, I see both their names.
I do too. They may have stepped away. Their hands have been raised for a moment. Perhaps we can move on to Denise C.
Rain, are you there?
Yes, Lorraine, I see your mic's turned on. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Ah,
Oh, great.
okay.
I was away for a moment. I'm sorry.
No,
We
no worries.
thought so.
Okay, I wanted to know about the security. Will there be any security at any of these stations? And who would be responsible for the security?
That's a great question, Joe. If you want to.
Yeah, so there will be security. There's not going to be a police station at any of these stations. There will be closed circuit TV at all four of the stations, which will be monitored directly by Metro or MTA, Metro North PD. But there will also be patrols by MTA PD and Metro North PD.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lorraine.
Denise, you have the ability to turn on your microphone. If you hit the microphone button at the bottom of the screen, you should be able to turn it on. Okay.
Denise, why don't I let Denise take a moment, see
Sure.
if we can get her, and I'll go to another question in the chat. So this question is from Victor. My concern is the pedestrian crossing for Hunts Point. The Bruckner Boulevard intersection is already a nightmare for pedestrian crossing. This project will increase foot traffic by at a minimum, 150%. How are you planning to resolve the flow of traffic at the intersection? This is not even counting the snow removal at the Hunts Point 6 train that traps people on this triangle island. That might be a public realm question towards the team.
Sure. I'm happy to take this one. So recognizing obviously the unique condition that is the condition of passing under the Bruckner today. A couple of things we would note, and obviously this has been part of the larger planning effort that's been coordinated with obviously EDC, who manages the Hunts Point markets and led the Hunts Point forward planning effort, but obviously also with others, including state DOT and obviously the MTA in their work. So this is obviously a priority for us. We've heard a lot over the years about the sort of stress that is just being in that environment. We obviously are out there often enough to understand well just how stressful and intense it can be, particularly as you cross from Del Valle Square to what would be the new station at Metro North. The rearrangement of the ramps, that project, which is a state DOT project, which is well underway, we think will go a long way to reducing some of those stressors. So some of the larger trucks that today need to kind of pass through there. As part of that work, there will be an enlargement of the sidewalk space. So under kind of that ramp that was removed, that was identified, I would just note, in our early workshops with the public at the point there and Hunts Point as a priority area to focus on. And so we were very happy to learn recently that that has been incorporated into the state's plans, and there will be an expanded sidewalk, which means a shorter crossing, which means, you know, more places for people to stand, less conflicts with traffic. We think there's still some work that needs to be done. And, you know, this is part of our more general planning work, which continues over the years, and obviously conversations with be it DOT or EDC or others to identify other opportunities. Del Valle Square itself is also going through a redesign that's being managed by the Department of Design and Construction. We're hopeful that that will help to resolve some of those issues that were mentioned. And then, you know, just more generally within the peninsula itself, you know, the primary station entrance will be located along Garrison there, but there will be a secondary entrance that was shown in Joe's diagrams, which is really where the that ramp was taken down recently, and that expanded sidewalk space will be. And we think that will be helpful and will obviously be the natural and primary path that people will be taking as they go between those two services. So I'll say there's a lot happening that we think will dramatically improve the situation, but we also recognize that there's still a lot of work to do to improve that condition. And I'll just share, maybe we've shared this in past public meetings, but someone wrote on a post-it at one of our public meetings that crossing under the Bruckner there at Hunts Point at Del Valle Square ruined their marriage, and so we're aware of this as a real issue. Yeah.
Thank you, Michael. Just one to you all too. Where can I find the seeker rules and information?
Yes, I can take that question, Lara. So the Mayor's Office of Environmental Coordination, or MOEC, coordinates environmental review within the city, working with city agencies on how to conduct their environmental review. I would just point to their website for a lot more about the rules that go into that. There is what is called a seeker technical manual, or a technical manual for the city environmental quality review. And that is a very expansive document that goes into a lot of detail about the procedure, what rules you need to follow throughout the environmental review process, but also about how specific analyses need to be conducted so that each agency that has to go through environmental review does the right thing and follows the same rules in getting to their environmental analysis. And then finally, for this specific project, so that's not just about the rules, but also about like how that materializes for this proposal for the Bronx Metro North neighborhood plan. More information is available on the zoning application portal that is accessible to the public, and under public documents, all public documents that relate to environmental review, but also to land use, are all available there for the public to see and review.
Thank you. And we'll make sure that you have that information in our communication with you too. I'm going to try to see if if people are available online. Denise, are you happen to be back? Okay. Tafadar, are you available?
Hi, yeah, sorry, my internet connection got messed up when you tapped me in last time. I mainly wanted to
Tell me how to
make a
say your
comment.
name properly. I just want to make sure I'm saying it correctly.
Sure, Tafadar, I also go by Taf.
Yep.
So, yeah, I wanted to comment on, it came up a couple of times, but the jobs portion of the plan, I'm very encouraged that we have engagement with the building trades unions and other institutions to make sure that there's going to be union jobs created that put our communities to work, making good wages that brings good health insurance and other benefits to retirement benefits to our communities. That's a kind of a hidden but added bonus of this plan. I do want to flag though that there need to be strong labor standards for the land use portion of the plan that is going to generate those 6,000 apartments and other amenities through the land use and rezoning changes. If we don't pay attention to labor standards on that, and usually what ends up happening in our city is that workers fall through the cracks, quite literally often on unsafe construction sites where contractors are given contracts and are able to skirt labor standards and other safety standards that end up affecting workers and pedestrians. I think in the last couple of days, we've had quite a few construction accidents in the city, and we need to make sure that we're putting people over profit. So there needs to be a microscope on the rezoning portion of this as well, in addition to everything else. But that was my comment. I'm really hoping that we see construction jobs come out of this that pay people a good wage, and I would suggest $40 an hour as a wage floor that allows people to be able to actually afford to live in the affordable housing that they're building. And that's truly going to contribute to making our city and our Bronx a better place to live. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Let's go to another raised hands. I'm sorry if I pronounced your name wrong again. I think it's Jarasia. Definitely not saying that correctly. Sorry.
Promoting to panelist. One moment, please. I think. Thracia, you should be able to turn on your microphone and your camera.
Sorry about that, because I was like, what happened? Okay, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Thank you. My question is, it's about the fair. Since we're in the city zone, are we going to be paying, I'm not going to say the $290, or are we going to be paying like the express bus fare? Because usually with the Metro North, you pay like the miles that you go. Because I know when I go up, like to like Newburgh area, I pay, as far up as I go. But since we're in the city zones, do we pay the $297? That
Yeah.
was one question. And then the second question I have is, being that we are using the existing Amtrak track, do you think eventually we're going to be able to use the Amtrak for, going elsewhere?
So I guess both are for me, but so first, we haven't established the fare yet. I mean, when I say we, again, speaking for the MTA, construction and development, the agency I work for wouldn't establish the fare anyways, but it'll be Metro North that ultimately establishes the fare in discussion with them. That'll come later as we get closer to revenue service, because it'll be, predicated on what the economic climate is at that time. So it would be, unfair to say what the fare is today. But what I do know, and again, because, we've heard this question before, so we've asked, is they will be considering something like what Long Island Railroad has right now for Jamaica into the city. So any stops between Jamaica and the city are eligible for, or Manhattan, or even Brooklyn Atlantic Terminal, are eligible for a city ticket, which is a reduced fare. So they would be considering similar options here from these 4 Bronx stations into Penn Station. But again, what that fare is, I don't know, and how much it will differ from what the standard fare is. Again, it'll be determined by what the fare is at that time, but it is definitely a consideration. And then I think what you're referring to is through running, with regard to utilizing Amtrak trains to go beyond what is Metro North service area now. And I know there's a lot of discussions with Amtrak on that, certainly as they embark on their Gateway Tunnel program to go south of Penn Station. I don't know where those discussions are, and it's still a long way off yet to understand whether Metro North, Long Island Railroad, or a combination of the two would be, expand through beyond Penn Station via through running.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. And I think that kind of gets to one of the questions in the chat too, is just elaborating on the MTA and the Amtrak's partnership on this project. I think you caught it there, but if there's anything you wanted to add.
Yeah, I mean, obviously they're the owner, we're a tenant. We're very reliant upon them. They not only need to, approve our work in terms of the planning, but literally need to provide personnel in order to oversee the work while it's taking place. So that's created a little bit of a hardship in terms of expediency for us right now. And that's why we needed that long-term outage. And we're looking for another similar long-term outage in the 2024 year. But our hope is that we execute more work for them, and they see the quality of the work and understand that they can trust it. Some of that will ease up a bit and allow us to work more freely and efficiently and more quickly. So, it's a tenuous but collaborative relationship. So it's working right now, and hopefully we'll continue to refine it and get it to work even better.
Great. And just one reminder, somebody was asking, can you remind us of the expected completion date?
Right now it's in 2027. We don't have a firm date, but it's anticipated 2027. We are rebaselining, taking a good hard look at where we are right now, approximately, a third to a half of the way into the project. So that our team's working on a schedule, and we'll have either a reconfirmation of that schedule or where it's moved to sometime early this year, probably middle of this year.
Okay. I have a couple more for you. So I'm just since we're already in dialogue, I'm just gonna keep going.
You've already bought me for the whole night, so I'm not going anywhere.
There's a question just about handicapped accessibility.
Yeah, all of these stations will be ADA accessible. They will all have elevators, and obviously stairs, but the stairs will be ADA accessible as well for folks who may not need an elevator, say not somebody who uses a cane or a walker or just is mobility challenged as opposed to needing a wheelchair. But the stairs will be ADA compliant, but they will all have elevator vertical circulation elements.
Okay, good. You spoke to this. I do want to acknowledge there's a lot of questions about security. So just to note that for you
Yep.
addressed how staffing would be on site. But I did want to just acknowledge that there are probably about a handful of questions about security. And then it's a question about is there a plan to include any green space or environmental friendly tools in the creation of the train stations, either solar panels or green roofs or anything like that?
I don't believe there are solar panels. Green roofs is a good question. I do know there is green space. There are in these plaza areas green spaces involved in that. There's going to be trees and some greenery associated with the plaza areas in front of these stations. But as far as turning, what sort of, and again, I'm using air quotes here that you probably can't see, but the dead space on a roof, let me double check that as far as green space. I don't believe solar, but there's the potential that there could be some green.
Okay. There are more questions for you. I'm going to give you a little breaks and ask them the other teams, but just one last one just on service. Do you have any information yet on the hours and the frequency of the trains?
Yeah, I mean, when service first starts, until we get everybody up to speed, obviously this is going to be a new line and a new travel pattern for not only riders but for also our team. Part of the last portion of this project is going to be testing and commissioning everything. So we're going to be training staff, train operators and conductors and personnel on the train operations here. But we anticipate 3 trains in the AM peak and 6 trains in the PM peak for Amtrak. Well, 3 exist. That's existing Amtrak right now. 3 in the AM, 6 in the PM, 12 Metro North in the AM peak, and 12 Metro North in the PM peak.
Okay, great.
Yep.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go to a raised hand. Gary?
Voting to panelist.
Thank you.
Just give it one moment. It's just taking a few moments to transition. Gary, you should be able to turn on your microphone and camera if you'd like to.
Mute. Am I here?
You're here.
Yes, you are.
Okay. I was going to phrase this as a question, but I think I know what the answer would have been, so I'll make it a comment. Given that there's going to be no parking facilities at the new stations, which is fine by me, by the way, every effort should be made to increase the local bus service to these stations. And also, I am afraid that MTA bus may use the increased rail service as a reason to decrease the express bus service. And the reason I am concerned about this is the Bronx, and particularly the Northeast Bronx, has been screwed with bus service since Jay Waldo was the chairman. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Thanks, Gary. And sorry, Lara. I mean, I don't know if it was a comment rather than a question, but I can respond to a degree if you like.
Of course, Joe.
So Gary, yes, I mean, we are a couple things. We just completed the Bronx network redesign for buses up there. So we have just taken a good hard look at it, but we will be taking a good look at it again as we get closer to service, because it won't be till 2027. So we'll take another look at it to see what may need to be tweaked or altered to accommodate transportation to the new service. But, for instance, we do hear a lot. When we were out recently in Co-op City, we've heard a lot about bus service especially to the station in Co-op City, for folks coming from District 5. And one of the things we're looking at now is the potential of adding a bus stop on the station side of the Erskine Place, proximate to the station, to get people closer by public transportation. So, we are cognizant of this. We are looking to make modifications. It goes beyond just the MTA. We're going to have a discussion with DOT on that and our city partners. But these are the kind of things that we're hearing as part of our efforts and as part of DCP's efforts to understand what first mile, last mile changes need to make this as effective a project as possible. And we are listening.
Well, thank you.
Thank you both. Okay, so now we're going to go to this is somebody's phone number. I don't have a name. It's a phone number ending in 254. If your phone number ends in 254, you're able to speak.
Okay, star 6. It sounds like it may be me. My
Yes,
name
it's
is
you.
Hattie Over. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, yes.
Oh, yes, from Co-op City, Section 5. And I'm looking at my name is Hattie Overman again. and I'm looking at the recommendations and concerns, and it says we need a need for the narrow streets such as Derima Avenue, Erskine Place, and Palmer Avenue need to be widened to accommodate the traffic. But they left out the Section 5 Hutchinson Parkway East, which is a single traffic lane. That lane is no more than 4 blocks, I would say, and it's the only entrance and exit that we have in Section 5. So have you considered that? That lane has not been considered because it's the only way in and out, and it's a single lane going north or south. Also, we have a school that they double park, the school bus and cars double park because they're dropping off their kids and they're picking up their children. There is no consideration so far pointing out this, and they promised us that they would come on site and look at what we are talking about here. We definitely need that Hutchinson Parkway East. That needs to be widened because it's only a single lane, as I said before. So what's going to be done about that? And who do we contact to keep abreast of what's going on? Because they promised us that they will come on site to look at it.
Thank you for that.
You there?
Yes, we're here. We're here. Thank you for that. I appreciate, we definitely took note of the streets that you were talking to, and we'll definitely bring it back to our colleagues at the city agencies, at the Department of City Planning. Michael, I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that.
So this is Michael we speaking to?
Yeah. Hi, how are you?
Yeah, well, who do we, talk to so that we can find out if there's anything going to progress or what are you going to do about it?
Yeah, well, I think maybe what we could do is whether it's over phone or we have our remote office hours, we can leave our information. I know it was shared in the presentation, but I'd be happy to jump on a call. We obviously work closely with the different parties that manage whether it's the streets or if it's the state with some of the highway changes and things like that. Would be happy to chat more and just make sure I understand more as well the concerns. But hear you loud and clear. We heard over the years a lot about like the killer curve, for instance, and some of the concerns around there. So I would just love to maybe start with a call, and we can make sure we understand fully the concern, and then we can figure out how we have a conversation and move it forward.
How do we follow up with you? Do I get an extension or an email or anything of that nature?
Yeah. Do you I don't know, Lara, what is the best way? I'm happy.
Yeah, we can direct message you Michael's information, and then you can have it there.
Well, how do I
you're
contact?
on the phone. I just realized you're on the phone. I'm so sorry.
I'm on the phone. Right, I didn't go on Zoom. So is there anyone that we can contact directly so we know how this thing is progressing?
Yes. If there's, so do you have a pen and paper?
I do.
Okay. So Michael, why don't you give your information or give the DL, and so that she can write that down and write.
Oh, sure. Yeah, sure. Yeah, so if you just want to send us an email, it's just BMNS for Bronx Metro North Study. So BMNS at nyc.planning.
I have that. I have that. I have that.
Okay. Yeah. So I'll see that if you send it, me and a couple others here. And so you just shoot me an email tonight or tomorrow, and then we can find a time to get on a call.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you.
No, thank you. I want to do a little time check. We still have some good questions that are coming in, and we have 2 hands raised. So one that I did want to answer, Ton and Michael, there's one from Peter that's just talking about like a little bit about just like what happens in the community while, what is studied when we're thinking about new zoning. There's questions he's asking about school overcrowding, security and traffic and congestion, and particularly about parking, and then any of the blocking of views and light and breeze. Like this is a very environmental review kind of question. And that, Tun, maybe you can answer a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. That's a good question. So with the proposal, it would change zoning and other land use rules like in the areas around Parkchester, Van Nest, and Morris Park Station. And through our environmental review process, we would look at what kind of future development would be expected to happen within the next 10 years and see what kind of impacts they could have on the community, on neighboring properties. So I see the question about like school overcrowding or crime and security. So the environmental review does look into the impacts on schools, elementary and middle school in the area, but also about public services, anything from trash collection to the police department's capacity. And other questions too about shadows, about casting shadows on open spaces, cast by potential new buildings that you could see in this area, and also about traffic and congestion. We've heard concerns about the road network there, and that is something that is studied throughout the environmental review process for the last year, starting in January of last year. That's thoroughly studied. That's not something that just the Department of City Planning does. We work together with other agencies whose expertise is really in these specific areas. For instance, we work directly with New York City's Department of Transportation to look into the traffic study, but also with school construction authority about school impacts. So across the board, we study the potential impacts of future development that we could see in these station areas, and we work with city partners, city agency partners to really on the details and see what effects could happen and how to deal with those, and also how to prevent those impacts from occurring.
Thank you. So we're going to go back to raised hands. Production, if you can promote Mary.
Voting now. Mary, you should be able to turn on your mic. Oh, there you
Yes.
go.
Yes, I just unmuted. Okay,
Hey,
well,
Mary.
I don't know if you've been reading the chat, but I have about a dozen and a half questions that have not been answered. Co-op City, especially Section 5, is a very crowded area. I know that MTA spokesman Joe O'Donnell believes that it's marshland on the south side of the tracks, but that is not true. That is not true. It was true when the station was planned to be further east, closer to the current bridge. It was moved west so that you could get up ahead of steam to get over the new bridge whenever that's going to be done. That is one of my questions. When is that going to be started? Is there soundproofing in the works, in the plan? We have people, 414 apartments in one building, 72 private homes, 64 townhouses, all within feet or yards of the tracks. Is there some kind of soundproofing being thought about? The other three stations have two sides access. To continually insist that it's marshland is incredibly disingenuous. There are 18 wheelers parked on the south side of the tracks. Right now, 50-foot, oh honey, what's the name of that? Pilings are being driven into the south side of the tracks. I'm not sure for what reason to add the third and fourth tracks, or if it's for something to do with the station itself. But the way that it's been moved under I-95, it should be very easy to make an extension, to get some extra money from the government to make an extension so that the center platform can be approached from the south side. There is a Selby bigger lot. It used to hold school buses. Another lot has been constructed right next to it. Hundreds of cars could be parked there in a park and ride. That doesn't have to come out of the MTA budget. I know everybody doesn't want money coming out of their budget, but this is something that is vitally needed for Section 5. As Hattie said, all our roads are one lane. You've already cut Erskine in half without any consideration of the blind spot making a right-hand turn to the I-95 South entrance from DeReamer. And you know, I've spoken to Michael, and he said, you know, call Donis Rodriguez, never heard back from them. We are being totally ignored in Co-op City. Michael's told me we're not ULURP. The Penn Station owns this land. Who do we address our problems to? Kirsten Gillibrand was very concerned that there was going to only be north of the tracks access. She's got other things on her plate. She did have her young men speak to me. One of them said, the plan makes the station functionally inaccessible. That was what he said after I explained all of the problems with this. When I spoke to Michael 2 years ago, Michael Cavalar, I mentioned the Selby lot. No one had talked about it because somehow it's still stuck in the MTA's head that the station is further east than it now is. It was going to be at the corner of Earhart Lane. If you look at a map, I'm sure some of you have maps, it's Earhart, Hunter, Baller, Palmer, DeReamer. It has been moved from Earhart to DeReamer. There is solid ground there to put another south of the tracks park and ride and entrance to the tracks when it's finished, to the station, the center platform of the station when it's finished. We have so many issues with this planning, and I hope you look at the chat. I put them all in there. Look at a dozen of them.
Yes, I'm looking at them right now. I see them there. So we definitely have them recorded, and definitely we'll continue the conversation.
But that Joe O'Donnell insists that it's marshland. Has he walked back there? Does he not know school buses are parked back there, were parked back there?
So Joe's turned on his camera, so I just want to give him a second to respond, and also acknowledging that it's 8 o'clock. So I want to get to, you know, one more hand, and then we can move on to just telling you next steps of where we got to go for this process.
Yeah, so a couple things. Hey, Mary. Yeah, and I don't know that I've said it was marshland. I said it was Parks wetlands. I don't know that there's a distinction, but you know, Parks is reluctant to give up land, you know, if they don't need to. So that was certainly the consideration for that side of the tracks. But I'll go back. I mean, and I have been over there a couple of times, but I'll go back to the project team and get a clearer answer as to why, despite the fact that, of course, we know it's moved west, as indicated by its location underneath I-95 now, and the lighting elements that are going to be going into the art program, because it has moved further away from where it was originally intended. So let me get an answer for you on that. Just an FYI too, if you don't already know, we'll be out at Section 5 in February, where we set up a public meeting for you all directly to come give you an update on the project. So we certainly can have that conversation then, and I'll have some project execs with us too to talk about things. So we can have a more fuller dialogue there. I don't want to take up all of tonight for that. But let me get a more definitive answer for you on that. With regard to the sound attenuation, there is a detailed environmental assessment on our website. There were areas identified where there would be noise impacts as a result of this new service. Those areas, there is sound mitigation for. Again, I'd have to double check the specific area that you're talking about, whether it was identified as having significant noise impacts. Obviously, those areas that were not determined to be having significant impacts, you know, do not have any noise mitigations as part of them. And I thought there was a third element to the question? I know there was the noise, I know it was the location. And then maybe it was the constriction of Erskine Place and DeRimer. So as I mentioned, I know we've been looking at that area, to add some increased bus service and a bus stop. So obviously there's some detailed study being undertaken into that whole DeRimer Erskine intersection, and going east or going west, depending on which way folks are either turning off at DeRimer to go in one direction, or the bus would be turning left to drop just beyond the station. So there's been some analysis implemented or activated, if you will, I guess, started on those kind of considerations as well. But we'll be out there, I believe it's February 5th, that we're going to be out there at Section 5.
That's terrific. Who have you spoken to about that?
Because it was coordinated through our outreach team. I don't know who they coordinated with at Section 5, but we're in the process of putting together a whole flyer for them to distribute.
Terrific. Thank you very, very much.
Yep.
Thank you, Mary, and thank you, Joe. Let's go to Marjorie. No, I'm sorry, I'm saying that wrong. Majora.
Majora, you should be able to turn on your microphone and camera if you like.
Okay, great. So, oh shoot, I had a question up there. So I'm just questioning, thank you so much for taking my call. I know it's late, but I was a little confused by one of the drawings, that detailed the Hunts Point station access, because I have the building that's right at Hunts Point in Bruckner, that former rail station. We're transforming it into an event hall. And it looked a little like the drawing itself showed that the Metro North station was actually going to block access to my building. And, we haven't had any conversations with Metro North about the designs on that side. So I'm sure you can understand why I was a little confused, and just hopefully it's just a drawing and a rendering, but this is also an invitation just to make sure that we can be in better communication, so that I know what's happening next to my building.
Hey, Majorda, it's Joe. How are you?
I'm wonderful. And yourself?
Good. Yeah, you can reach out directly if there's a question or concern. I mean, obviously it is a rendering, it's conceptual. And so the vantage point may not be 100%, but this is going to be behind your building. So no, there's no blockage in our estimation to your building, but I'm happy, I can shoot you an email tomorrow with the rendering, and you can sort of point out what your concerns are, and we can go from there if you like.
I would love that. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, great. So I'm just looking through the questions. I know that we didn't get to each individual, but it looks like we've touched many of the topics that you all have been raising. I did want to get to one last one for the team. This is focused on applicability. I think that a lot of people have had the impression the city is going to come in and build residence, commercial spaces, and designate what the buildings will look like. That, i.e., that they will look like what is in your sketches. And Joe, you just mentioned this, that these were just sketches; they're not exactly to the right proportions right now. So I just wanted to have the team just talk a little bit more. But how much is the development dependent on individual developers showing up with projects and currently property owners selling to those developers? It's very hard to envision the process.
I'm happy to take that one, and then Michael and Ton and jump in. So it's a great question. So just in terms of the process, as we talked about earlier, in the next couple of weeks, we will formally begin public review. And so one of the things that's going to happen here is there's a proposal here. But what I would just want to note is that the majority of the land is privately owned. And so as we go through this process, whatever gets adopted at the very end in terms of zoning regulations and rules, that's what people will be able to build by. So in terms of height, uses, and those types of things. And so a lot of it is going to be contingent on that. So And it's private property, so property owners can sell. And we've seen this in other studies where even before the proposal actually gets adopted or even enters public review, there's transactions that take place in anticipation of, increased density and those kinds of things. So all that's happening. But really important to note that we are starting public review in a couple of weeks, and we really want folks to be engaged in that process. So encouraging folks to sign up for our newsletter. Many people put questions in the chat, as Lara mentioned. We didn't get to them all, but we're going to take all those questions and get back to folks to engage in that process and sort of find out. And again, at the very end, it's a 7-month process. I think as we talked about, there are many steps for folks to engage. We'll be at the City Planning Commission first, but obviously the community board, the borough president, while not required pursuant to the charter to hold a public hearing, will hold a public hearing, as well as city council. And those are 3 public meetings that you can participate in. You can also send in comments. You can write in comments if you can't participate in person. So there are many, many different opportunities for folks to engage in the process and give us feedback. So we encourage everyone here and also folks that aren't here tonight who weren't able to attend to engage with us because we do want to hear from folks.
Thank you so much, Paul. And I think that's a great point where we can probably close out for the evening. But I wanted to first say, Michael, if you wanted to talk a little bit about the office hours and the ways that they can be in touch with us.
Yeah, sure thing. So I just said, building on Paul's last point, we heard from the council members at the beginning of the meeting, and they're a very important part of the public process. And so, that's coming as well, to Paul's point. In terms of us and chatting with us, we do have remote office hours. We've been doing these for quite a while now. Some weeks we have none, some weeks we have a number of them. We have a easy to access website. You can scan the QR code. It's also available on our main website. There's a link to it. And basically what you do is you just look for a day that one of us is available. You can choose a time slot. They're 15-minute sessions, and you'll get currently myself or Tun for one of these. So we'll pop up. It's one-on-one. We can invite others as appropriate for specific conversations. But we log all of this. This has been informing our recommendations and our planning work over the years. We follow up with questions, whether it's reaching out to the MTA or state DOT. If they're not questions we can directly answer ourselves, and so we encourage people to join and keep in touch.
Thank you so much, Michael. I want to thank you all for all your questions. We have them all recorded, and there is a recording of this that will be up on our YouTube page that we'll make sure to get out to everyone. But I wanted to turn it over to you, Paul, if there's any last remarks you wanted to give.
Sure. I just wanted to really thank everyone for their participation tonight. This is really important, sort of like precursor to starting the public review process. As Lara mentioned, we're recording all your questions, and this is really great for us because we do want to continue to hear from folks. So I want to thank everyone that participated. I want to thank the MTA, all of our elected officials that joined us, all of the DCP staff were here, and everyone that participated spending this evening asking questions. And we look forward to seeing and hearing from you folks in the future as we enter public review in a few weeks. And everyone have a great night and get home safely.
Thank you so much.
Thanks all.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.